Okay, party people, DK here with Mr. V Amps, and we've got a Fender Frontman 212R. It came in, a guy bought it, he was told it needed speakers. Well, I looked at the speakers that were here in it, and they're open, and the edges around here are cracked, like it took a big electrical hit. So I checked it, and there was no DC on the output at the time. So I put a sacrificial speaker and tried it, and then I put some other speakers that weren't blown up in there and played it for all of 2 minutes, and it seemed to be going really well. And then it made a horrible buzzing noise and popped its fuse, and well, the output transistors and the driver transistors are not in the mood for dancing. Shorted, totally shorted. Shorted? Eh, not that one. Huh, those two are, okay. How about this one? Oh yeah. Alright, and that one? Oh yes. So, welcome to the world of solid state. When they fail, they fail. So, I've got these already here, ready to put in. We'll start there and then work our way back. We need to make sure these resistors are not open. And the beep in this case is actually a good thing, because those are like, what are they? 20 some ohm resistors, so I should see conductivity between those, so those are still alive. But you know, it did blow its fuse, which is good, I guess, because it didn't blow my replacement speakers, which are better than the ones that came out. But oh goodness, why do I end up getting all these solid states? Because I'm one of the few people who was willing to work on them. Alright, time to bench this chassis and get this up here and get her going. Okay, so I've got this thing over Apple Cart. What you have to do to get the board out is you're going to have to take all the front end stuff off. You're going to have to take the transformer and disconnect it and set it off to the side there. And once you got all the screws out, then you can flip this thing up on its tail. And at that point you can unscrew and remove the transistors in question. This is not fun, but you do what you got to do. Okay, now you're probably not going to be able to see this. I got the main transistors that were shorted for certain changed. The driver transistors actually were only showing shorted because the things they were driving were shorted. They actually tested okay in the component tester. I bought them anyway, you know, just try not to worry about it. But the question would be, why did this stuff short? And my guess is because somebody took this apart to look in it or did something to it, and then did a dumb job of putting it back together. The reason I say this, there are these screws that go through this metal plate and through this block underneath. And on the bottom, there should be some kind of nut to hold this aluminum heatsink block to the chassis, but it wasn't there. So this little aluminum plate, which was supposed to be tightly adhered to this for heat dissipation, was essentially floating, so it could drop, and it was doing a crappy job of dissipating heat. So I'm obviously not the first monkey in the jungle here, and I don't know who took it apart or why they took it apart, but I mean, everything else looks original. Whatever. I don't know, time to put it back together enough to test. Okay, here's why I was confused about this, and yes, there was somebody in here and they did this wrong. The plate that the transistors mount to is threaded for the screws. Dude put the screws in from the top, so they couldn't grab, because I had to put the screwdriver on the top to take them out. They should be screwed in from the bottom, so when the threads catch in the threaded portion of this plate, it pulls that and the block and everything all together to help dissipate the heat from the chassis. So why did these transistors fail? Because somebody played the amp and they got warm, and then they went kaboom because some dingbat was in here and didn't put the heatsink on correct. So now at least we know. based on that assessment, I'm gonna think we're probably gonna be in okay shape. I don't know yet, but we shall see. We're gonna finish putting it back together enough to test. Okay, so we're going on our Variac here. I started at about 35, 40 volts. Our transistors are not getting warm, no issues there. We're up to about 75 volts, and obviously it's sounding, it's working, the channel switching works. There's one weird anomaly I'd like to solve. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but when I pull when there's no input in it at all, it has just a little bit of a hum. When you put the input jack in and connect a signal to it, it goes away. So one would think it's a ground, but it's like a really deep, like almost a 60 hertz hum. Strange. Now, let's see, what are we at here? We were at 70-ish volts. Let's go up to, that's about 100 volts. How loud's that hum? See, that sounds like 120 right there. And it's weird because it goes away when I plug the input jack in. I mean, this thing's, it's working. I'll have to look and see if any... Okay, so I figured out where the noise was coming from. Both of these are switched jacks where they're kind of like the stereo style connector where they've got two switches on them. And they're in both this is like a stereo style jack, and when they're both pulled out, this one upper switch is when it touches ground, or when it grounds itself out, when you pull it out, that's where the noise is coming from. And the way this is wired on the schematic, it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to ground out. The main tip grounds out fine, but it's the secondary switch. The switch on, these, obviously input 1's supposed to be hotter than input 2, and that is the case. But for whatever reason, there's just some kind of funky noise that's coming into the stereo, like the channel 2 of number 1. So I just put a little bit of insulation on that to quell it out, and now the amp is staying whisper quiet when you don't have a jack in it. And we're running it at 100 and there's 110. That should be good. And we've got an 8 ohm load on it, which is what we're going to be running it for speakers. And our transistors aren't showing any warmth, and we're showing a DC offset of 0.01 volts. So very, very good. I mean, I would be okay with less than a tenth, and I have 1/100th of a volt. So that's very nice. I would say we're fixed at this point, but I should probably, put some noise through it and test on it a little bit, just make sure I'm correct on that assumption. But beyond that, I think we're good. We'll put it back together and give it a test tomorrow when it's not late at night. But yeah, it looks like, my guess is, okay, this is theorizing, because again, I don't know where this has been before it got here. I know my friend bought it from somebody on a Craigslist or Marketplace or something like that, secondhand. And the guy said, oh, the speakers are blown and just need speakers. And by that assessment, I would say he was correct, that it probably just needed speakers. Maybe he tried to play a bass through it. I don't know. Because when I got it in here, it had virtually no DC offset. These were not testing as shorted. I plugged in regular speakers and played at a modest volume, and with a very short time, I mean modest volume, those transistors went pop, and DC voltage galore, and the fuse blew. Now, interestingly enough, the fuse that was in here when it got here was not blown. So I watched it explode here in the shop. Of course, I never dropped the chassis because it was working. It did not take out my new speakers, because my new speakers are better than the factory ones. Yeah, baby. But yeah, it looks like, my guess is after Buddy blew his speakers, maybe he took this apart to see what was going on and then put these screws in upside down, which did not allow the heatsink compound, aka bird poop. And the reason you call it bird poop is, quite frankly, it just gets everywhere and it's messy and sticky and nasty, but it doesn't smell bad and it's not really gross or anything. I know somebody's going to ask me what kind of heatsink compound we use. I don't even see where I put the tube of it, but it's just super lube. There it is, yeah. Super lube silicone heatsink compound dielectric. You can buy that, you know, at your electronics superstore or general internet marketplace. So yeah, we've been running at full wall voltage for a good clip here, and we're obviously double fused because of our Variac. Yeah, we'll let it cook for a while, put some noise through it, put the rest of the screws on. I think we're done. Is it filming? Did it kick on? Yeah, it's going.
Looks like it's good.
Yeah, it's going. Let's see. Let's try that one. See, this should be our, I don't know how high to add the drive, about halfway. So let's see. Yeah. And then there's the more drive button, which puts you into a mid contour that scoops out the mid, so now you're in like metal. Yeah. Which of course, I got it. It sounds underwater because I didn't crank it up, but you know how it is. The mids overpower everything when you crank them up. I'd say it's alive.
Doobie Brothers song would sound good on that, wouldn't it?